Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is good boy number one. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm glad I'm number one, and I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good, glad to hear it. And good boy number two, Justin, how you doing?
Resisting the urge to swear and be vulgar is how I'm doing, because that would go on theme, but it seems too crass to do this early into the podcast, you know?
Yeah, we got to warm them up first.
But otherwise, I'm good. How are you, Chris?
Oh, I'm doing well. Excited to talk about Good Boys and whatever else we got on our minds.
All right, guys, and since we're reviewing Good Boys, I had a question for you guys.
Oh, boy. Okay.
How much would you pay for a CPR doll? A quote, CPR, quote, doll.
Sure. I don't know that I would ever pay for one, but I guess gun to my head and I had to pay something for one. I can't see myself spending more than like $50.
Yeah.
That seems like max. And it better be pretty functional.
Yeah. Chris, how much did you pay for the one you already have?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was like, the question should be, how much have you paid for a CPR doll?
How much did you pay?
Yeah. Well, let me ask Sally here real quick. Sally,
how much did you cost?
We're going to Lars and the Real Girl this. Yeah, I would. It's $50. I wouldn't pay very much for that.
Yeah. How do you guys imagine those things are cleaned? Water hose? Dishwasher?
Yeah, like the thing that you pull out of like sinks that sprays. I don't know what that's called, but like sink hose.
Just blast it with hot water.
All
awesome.
Right.
And if this is your first time listening to the show, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March. And then for our feature review, we will be reviewing Good Boys.
And something that's really cool that we do is each month we review a film from the Criterion Collection called Casually Criterion. Last month we did Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend, and this month we are going to do Valley of the Dolls, which won our latest poll. So each month we also take a poll. We each pick a movie, and we let you guys choose which of the three movies we get to do. So Valley of the Dolls is the one for this month.
Yeah, and that was based on the theme late 60s American cinema, inspired by Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's right. And if you want to vote in those polls to help us choose our next Casually Criterion film, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. And if you want to send us questions about the films that we're going to be reviewing each week, you can email those to casualcinemedia at gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already and you like the show, go give us a 5-star review on iTunes. It helps other people find the show so they can also like it.
Please and thank you. And with that, are we ready to go ahead and just move on into News on the March?
Let's go.
News on the March!
So this last week, I got to guest on Cinemusts, a great podcast hosted by Mike Amal. And I got to watch two great films on there. One that we did a podcast on, Tokyo Story. I really love that movie a lot. And each time I watch it and talk about it, I feel like I find out more and more about it. Then we also watched An Autumn Afternoon, which I also really liked. I thought it was pretty good. Not as good as Tokyo Story, but a really solid film. Ultimately, I think everybody should go check out the Cinemusts podcast. Not even just the one that I'm on, but the one that, just as a podcast, go listen to it, subscribe. It's a really great podcast. I know that like every time I talk about Tokyo Story, I feel like I find out more and more about it and discover more in there. So go watch Tokyo Story and then listen to the Cinemusts podcast.
And then listen to our episode also, because we have an episode on Tokyo Story.
Yeah. I'm about halfway through the Cinemusts episode, the one that you're on, Chris, and it's quite good so far. I haven't seen An Autumn Afternoon, so I'm going to have to stop before y'all get too in-depth on that one, but I'm in like the middle of the spoilery part of Tokyo Story, and it's good. It's a great conversation about Ozu and Tokyo Story, and I listened to the like non-spoiler part of An Autumn Afternoon, and it somewhat made me want to see the movie.
It's really interesting what Ozu does, and he kind of does the same story over and over again. So I can't wait till I have seen all of his films, because it's like this one story told from, just like a bunch of different points of view or in like slightly different ways. So I think Ozu is really fascinating.
For sure. And yeah, I will plug the podcast as well. I think it's really great what they do over there. If you don't know, if you haven't checked it out, they watch 2 films an episode from the 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die book, and then they vote on the episode and then put it up to listener votes to whether the film is a film that everyone has to see or a film that some people should see, or the film that no one should see, right? And they're basically building this list of Cinemusts, of like films everyone must see, right? So
yeah, they're from the
very
book
fun.
like 1001 Movies You Should Watch Before You Die.
Indeed.
Awesome. So that is Cinemusts. One word. All right, guys. So I recently watched the first season of an Amazon Prime show called The Boys, which is based on the comic series of the same name that ran a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I started watching this was because I saw that it was Amazon's like highest rated show ever. Have any of you guys seen this show or heard of it or anything?
Yeah, I've seen the first season.
Oh, okay. You watched the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. I've heard of it and I've wanted to watch it, but I don't have Amazon Prime, so I have not watched it yet, but maybe soon.
Well, I really enjoyed it. It's a little pulpy and tongue-in-cheek in several places, but once you get used to that tone, I think it moves and it scratches that same kind of itch that Watchmen does for me. Superheroes with personality disorders, Except I think The Boys goes more into that than The Watchmen did. I don't know. I really enjoyed that aspect of the show quite a bit. Chris, what did you think of the show, first of all?
I think I liked it more towards the end. I started enjoying it more. At first, I wasn't quite that into it, but I kept watching for whatever reason. So
yeah, what I'll say is I probably wasn't into it until probably about episode 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never boring, even when you're not into it, right? Like it really moves. The first episode, I really enjoyed the last couple episodes quite a bit. I think you can't really talk about this show without talking about Anthony Starr. He is in a show, or he was in a show called Banshee that used to come on Cinemax. Yeah. He is so good in this show.
Mm-hmm.
He is just infinitely watchable. And also Jack Quaid is in this, looking a lot like his parents, which is pretty distracting until you get used to it, I think. Like, this is the son of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
I never put that together, so it wasn't that distracting for me.
Looks so much like Dennis Quaid with Meg Ryan's nose. It's weird. I don't know how you couldn't think of it the whole time. But anyway, here's your hook. There's a group called The Seven, which is kind of like Justice League, but darker, I guess. They're owned by corporations who handle them like a business, like a sports team almost, In the first episode, a guy named Huey is walking down the street with his girlfriend, and they stop to have a nice little chat, and then out of nowhere, his girlfriend explodes, like full of blood all over the place, and then you find out that a superhero ran straight through her on accident at like top speed. And as a result, they try to buy him off and try to buy his silence, like the corporation that owns them, right? And that sort of kicks off into gear him joining The Boys, which is basically a group kind of meant to take down superheroes, even though they're not superheroes themselves. And I don't want to go too much more into it than that. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I can't wait for season 2, because I think the last couple episodes of this season, I think were really, really interesting.
I think Carl Urban's really good.
Oh man, Carl Urban, this is the best I've ever seen Carl Urban.
Yeah, he's really good in this. It just made me more excited for The Watchmen, because I think this is almost there. It's like
it made me more nervous about The Watchmen, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah?
Same kind of subject matter, but this show is so watchable and so not boring at all. If Watchmen on HBO ends up coming out and ends up being better than this, I will be surprised.
Well, I certainly hope it is. I think it's going to be... They're a little bit different. This is going for kind of like dark comedic laughs sometimes,
Yeah, it's very much in the tone of the comic book from what I understand. Like very tongue-in-cheek, very pulpy is kind of what I was saying earlier.
It's written by the same guy that did The Preacher, the comic book is, and then Seth Rogen has his hand in both The Preacher and this. So if you like the tone of The Preacher, I think you'll like this one, because it's very similar.
I don't like the tone of Preacher, but I like this. I've only ever seen one episode of The Preacher, though, so I may not be the best person to.
Yeah, and even with
judge
this,
that.
you were saying that it took you like 2 or 3 episodes to get into it. So
Preacher, I thought was boring in the first episode, and I'm sure it gets better after that. Everyone says it does. It didn't hook me, whereas like this one, I wasn't bored at all, and I was immediately like, well, I can do episode 2, you know?
Preacher's definitely hit or miss. I do enjoy it, but it is hit and miss.
Yeah.
Which I think this is too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, kind of like Watchmen, this is like what happens when you explore superheroes with superpowered libidos and personality disorders, you know? It's pretty interesting, I guess, and it kind of takes into account like what the everyday human would think of these people and how they are viewed and how they are feared, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, pretty interesting. It's a pretty good first season. I don't know that it's Amazon's best show ever, but then again, I also haven't seen that many Amazon shows, and it's definitely the best Amazon show I've seen. So, yeah, anyway, The Boys. Season 2 is filming now. The comics already exist. If you're interested, check it out. See what you think.
Oh, well, I'm interested. You guys sold me.
I mean, you may hate it, but you also might really like it. It's hard to tell. You know, it's really hard to tell, but the 2 people I know who have actually watched, or 3 people I know who have actually watched the show, they all seem to like it, so
Yeah. Okay.
give it a spin. Anyway, that's all I have for The Boys. Chris, what's on your mind this week?
Netflix dropped Mindhunter this last Friday, and I've been eagerly anticipating this. I'm a big fan of the first season of Mindhunter.
Yeah, me too. I didn't realize the second season had even dropped yet because Netflix sucks at letting people know that they have content.
Yeah, I was very aware. Like, I mean, because I would Google it, because I was very excited about it. I knew it was coming out soon. Yeah, I was big fan of David Fincher's TV show. He previously did House of Cards, which I wasn't super big fan of. But Mindhunter is really good. It's very much in the vein of like Zodiac, like late David Fincher, where he's very precise and technical about everything he's doing. I really love the first season, and the second season is really great too. I think it's a little bit, probably like it's 9 episodes, so the last like 4 episodes very much reminded me of The Wire, because it's so procedurally based. These guys are just trying to solve a mystery, but they have to go through all the like political and legal things in order to solve this mystery, and those things can pull up roadblocks, to keep you from doing it. So that
Red
second
tape.
half, yeah, a lot of red tape, stuff like that. And so that second half really reminded me a lot of, The Wire and things like that procedural drama. But then, the first half also has, just like these in-depth characters. All the characters in it and the acting is just really great, and 3-dimensional characters. And then you get these great scenes with the serial killers. And I guess I should tell you, so Mindhunter is about the FBI and the birth of the BSU, the Behavioral Science Unit, and they go around and interview a bunch of serial killers.
But they didn't have the name serial killer at the time, right? Like a lot of season 1 is like coming up with that term even.
Right. They called them multiple murderers or something along those lines, something that's not nearly as catchy as serial killer. Part of the thing that's so interesting is seeing them come up with these terms that we know and connect to these things all the time anyways. But yeah, I think that this is a really great show. The first season's, if you haven't watched either one, first season's very much worth it, and then the second season is too. It's definitely a show, even though I did binge it, I would suggest, taking time in between each episode, or watching 2 and calling it a night, or watching something else, because it's definitely one to be savored. Even though I did not, let me tell you from my own experience, savor it, enjoy it while it's here. Don't rush through it.
Awesome. Well, I'll probably watch at least the first episode after we get off recording here.
Yeah, I never watched the first season past like the first half of the first episode because I wasn't into it, but I feel like I should give it, at least like a couple episodes before making final judgment. I just, never got back around to it once I got distracted.
Yeah. And I can understand feeling that way too, because, we were talking about how like The Boys is Amazon's highest rated show ever. The thing about these streaming services like Amazon, Netflix, it seems like they have a lot of shows, but a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Like cheaply made, rushed, not good stuff, right? And I think Mindhunter is one of like the couple shows on Netflix that I think is actually good enough to where if they put it on network TV and spaced it out, showed an episode a week, it could actually hold up to the week-to-week discussion. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be on HBO for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like most Netflix stuff doesn't hold up to that kind of like scrutiny, you know?
Right.
No. It's also a show that is very dry, you know, because it's very procedural based. So
it's like Zodiac, I think, is like the best way to describe it. Like if you think like David Fincher's Zodiac is interesting, then this is the show for you. Yeah. If you think that movie is at all boring, this is not the show for you.
I love Zodiac too. I guess it was that first, I think I made it like 30, 40 minutes through the first episode, which is probably almost the whole episode. So I don't know what the disconnect is, but it does interest me because I like Zodiac so much. So I always keep meaning to go back to it. Agreed. You should.
Yeah, I recommend it.
All right. Justin, what is on your mind, sir?
Well, I'm going to move us out of the realm of 6 to 8 episode long seasons and move us into
Mindhunter's more than that, though.
Oh, well, whatever.
You can still move us on.
I'll still move us on from serialized episodic TV to a one-off movie, or at this point a one-off movie trailer, because that's all we have. And that's a trailer for a film I've been super excited about, and that is Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life.
Remember the day when we first met? I remember that motorcycle, my best dress. You looked at me, and I knew how simple life was then.
What's happened to our country? We're killing innocent people, raiding other countries, preying on the weak. If our leaders, if they're evil, what does one do?
You have a duty to the fatherland. The church tells you so.
You cannot say no to your race and your hope. You are a traitor.
I can't swear loyalty to Hitler. I can't.
Do you think your defiance will change the course of things?
Get out!
If God gives us free will, we're responsible for what we do, what we fail to do. I can't do what I believe is wrong.
Let me go!
We have to stand up to evil.
Whatever you do, I'm with you. Always.
I've been excited for the movie. I immediately watched the trailer when I found out it was out, which I don't often do, but I feel like for a Terrence Malick film, watching one of his trailers is probably fine. I am super hyped on it. I think it looks great. I think it looks like potentially a return to like top tier Terrence Malick, which I don't think he's hit since Tree of Life. I think he got like really high on making movies and just like binge made like three movies in a row really quickly that came out like right shortly after Tree of Life, and none of them were nearly as good as any of his other films, but it seemed like he took a break between those and like A Hidden Life. Just based on the trailer alone, like this looks way more interesting.
I saw To the Wonder, but I didn't see the movies he made after that. And To the Wonder pretty much killed all my excitement for Terrence Malick.
Yeah.
Like in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
And I loved Tree of Life, right? I thought my days of looking forward to Terrence Malick were gone, you know? But then this trailer dropped and I was like, oh, okay. He does still have like the ability to make something interesting looking still.
Yeah.
Man, To the Wonder was like pulling teeth.
Yeah, it felt like Terrence Malick trying to be Terrence Malick and actors trying to act in a Terrence Malick film. Like it didn't feel organic and natural like all of his other films do. Because that's kind of where he shines, is like this sort of natural, in the moment, less scripted sort of film. And that just didn't come through in other ones. I saw To the Wonder, which I also did not like, and then Knight of Cups, the one with Christian Bale, where he's like a Hollywood screenwriter, and that was even harder to watch. But this one, for those who don't know, it's set in World War II. It's about a German who refuses to fight for the Nazis during World War II. Already, that's pretty interesting. It sounds like it has a lot more plot, and the trailer looks like it has more plot than some of his more recent films. And I thought it was interesting. It has two people. I don't know if this is their final performance, but Michael Nyqvist and Bruno Ganz have both passed away since filming this movie. But I just thought that was a fun fact. But I don't know. What do you guys think of the trailer?
I think it looks good. I think it could be a return to what I like about Terrence Malick, Mm-hmm. But I'm also acutely aware that he's made 3 movies that were not well received since then, since Tree of Life. And so I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. But the trailer does look really good. Like, so if he delivers the movie that the trailer is, and they didn't just like cut the most dramatic parts and put them into the trailer,
yeah,
then I think it's going to be a good movie. But I can also see the marketing team being like, we got to sell this movie. And then taking like the 5 minutes of plot.
And the best shots,
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be totally surprised if the majority of the plot is in that trailer and the rest is a little bit meandering and...
Well, sure. And I don't need a whole lot of plot, but I feel like I need it to... I couldn't even place what it is exactly about To the Wonder that doesn't have the same magic, but like it feels less rushed than his latest movies have.
It was interesting when you were talking about To the Wonder and the improv of it, and how, he kind of works around those moments. There's a story about like Robert Altman and always talking about the happy accidents. Like, and that's great. Happy accidents are great when they work out. You get a film like Nashville or something like that. But also you can get a film like Dr. T and the Women, like from Robert Altman. And it's kind of the same thing here. It sounds like working on that improv. And if there's just not that magic, it just doesn't work out.
Yeah. When's the release date for this? Is it award season?
Oh, yeah.
December 11th, 2019.
Boom.
Put it down. We're doing an episode on it. I'll tell you guys right now.
It's counter-programming to Star Wars.
Cool. But yeah, that is A Hidden Life, the new Terrence Malick film. The trailer is out. If you haven't seen it, go check it out because it's a great trailer. And yeah, that's what I had to talk about.
Groovy. I think it's time we just go ahead and move on into our review for Good Boys. What do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. I'm ready.
Look what I found at school today.
What is it? I have no idea.
That's a tampon. Girls shove it up their buttholes to stop babies from coming out. An 8th grader told me that.
I'm having a party tomorrow. You in?
Yeah. Can Thor and Lucas come? They're so random. They're my best friends. We do everything together. There's gonna be girls at the party. You know what that means?
Drama.
No. Kissing.
You do not want to go to Soren's party not knowing how to kiss.
We could spy on my neighbor. She's a total nymphomaniac.
She starts fires.
No, she's a nymphomaniac. Someone who has sex on land and sea.
This is what happens when you don't respect women.
I respect women. My mom's my best friend.
What about me?
All right, so as always with these reviews, before we get going, wanted to let you know that if you have not seen the movie, it's okay. You can keep listening. At first, we're not going to spoil anything. We'll be doing a spoiler-free review, and before we get into spoilers and spoiling things, we'll give you a spoiler alert so that you have plenty of time to stop the podcast, go see Good Boys, and then come back and finish it.
All right, so Good Boys was directed by Gene Stupinski, starring Jacob Tremblay, Keith L. Williams, and Brady Noon. The IMDb synopsis says, 3 6th-grade boys ditch school and embark on an epic journey while carrying accidentally stolen drugs, being hunted by teenage girls, and trying to make their way home in time for a long-awaited party. So, guys, who wants to get us started? Why don't you do it, Justin? What was your overall impressions and thoughts on Good Boys?
Well, overall, I liked the movie. I didn't think that I would. at least like based on the trailers, but I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. You know, I don't think it's a great film or even like a great comedy, but overall, like I had a good time with it, you know, and the reason that I was thinking that the film like might not be good based on the trailers is because it seemed to have this sort of campaign of like, look how vulgar these kids are being. And like, isn't it funny that kids are being this vulgar? And that's like how it's trying to get you into the theater, right? And that is that's not enough for me.
It only get you so far.
Right. I don't think it could carry like an entire film, right? And based on the trailer, like, that's all it seemed like, you know?
Yeah, it's like, you remember Ren and Stimpy on Nickelodeon when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Or we were kids?
Yes.
Yeah, that show's trash.
Yeah, I don't think it's very good, but it was vulgar.
It's just
for
gross out humor.
Vulgar's sake, yeah. And I think even like some early South Park suffers from that too. Like I've tried to watch early South Park and go back and like watch the whole series, and those early seasons.
It really starts getting good around season 5, I think.
Yeah, the early seasons are tough to get through. The reason is because it is vulgar for like vulgar and shock's sake, and you know, I think in movies that are that way, or sometimes TV shows that are that way, like it ends up being like the only joke of the film, and it's a crutch that it leans on the whole time, which gets old very, very quickly. And the movie does have some of those moments in there, some jokes that are purely that vulgar or the shock of something being said by a kid. But I think it also has a lot more jokes beyond that, and it builds on those jokes. And even some of the jokes that felt like they were just vulgar early on had more payoff and things that happened later in the film because of it. So I was happy about that. And the big thing for me is that I was surprised that this movie has the amount of heart that it does, because I don't think it really had to have any. I don't think anybody going to see this movie would expect or demand heart from it.
Right. Yeah.
Because it seems like it's just going to be this like raunchy film. And a lot of times with those like more recent like raunchy films, the characters end up being like very, very mean spirited, and nobody's really nice or likable.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it always like rubs me the wrong way, but this movie has characters that I like, characters that are well written, a couple of good emotional moments, which again, I never expected. I think all 3 kids give pretty good performance and have pretty good comedic timing for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately, I like the movie, but I don't think it's going to be like a comedy that's going to stick with us like even like a year from now, or definitely not like a few years from now. I think it'll be mostly forgotten. Like I don't think it quite hits that like tier of comedy that sticks around like Superbad or The Hangover or Anchorman, some of those films that stayed relevant in pop culture and stayed popular. I don't think it'll do that, but I do think that it is the best like straight comedy film that we've had so far this year. So that's where I'm at. Chris, where are you at?
It's interesting hearing you talk about what your fears were for this movie, because some of the things that grated on my nerves with this movie was specifically that I felt that they leaned too much on the crutch of like these vulgar things happening and the kids saying crazy stuff, or vulgar things as well. So that part didn't quite work for me. There's a bit too much for it. There are some really funny gags in here, though. Like I laughed like a good solid time. I don't know that I'm quite as high on it as you are, Justin. Yeah, it's an enjoyable film, I think. It's just, I think for me, the ultimate thing was it just felt that like there's a lot of vulgar stuff in there for vulgar's sake, and it, especially with the children, leaning on that crutch of the cursing and stuff like that, which makes me sound like an old fogey.
Yeah,
but,
it does.
I don't mind cursing or anything. It just felt like they were relying on that joke.
You had to leave the theater and immediately go to church.
Yeah, I did go to church. I took Sally, my blow-up doll, with me as well.
I thought it was a CPR doll. What the fuck?
Yeah.
It's a blow-up CPR doll, man.
Oh, okay.
Have you not heard about those?
It's an all-purpose doll. It's like a Swiss Army doll.
It's portable, essentially.
Yeah. But, and like you said, Mike, or Justin, I think that there are, I think the performance is good, and there are good, really solid moments that we can get into a little bit more in spoilers. I like the rivalry with the older girls. I thought that was fun and stuff like that. So, I don't think it's the best movie of the year or even straight comedy of the year, but I did enjoy my time with it. I wish, honestly, that I had seen it with a bigger crowd because my crowd was very sparse, and I think a lot of times having a crowd can help your enjoyment of a film.
Yeah, especially in comedies.
Yeah, absolutely. Like having other people laugh. I mean, even just as a performer, like when you're in a comedy and like you have a really dead house and nobody's laughing, you're like, there's no energy to feed off of, right? So just being in the audience too, there's some sort of energy that you feed off of each other, and it really helps.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, so I can't wait to get into spoilers because I think there's a lot of cool moments in here and maybe not so cool moments. But Mike, what did you think?
Yeah, so I think it might be possible that I enjoyed this movie more than either of you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I'm sitting at like a 3.5 out of 5 right now, I think. I think this movie is a lot of fun. I got to watch it with a jam-packed movie theater, right? Like a crowd that was very into it. They laughed at everything, like wall-to-wall laughter the whole time. Some jokes I didn't even get to hear because they were laughing so much. That experience was a lot of fun, right? It made me laugh at things that I probably wouldn't have laughed at otherwise. It also made me appreciate the things that I didn't laugh at a little bit more because I could see them actually working for people, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I think the performances from the little kids are all really good. I think Jacob Tremblay, just a really talented little kid. Like between Room and this, that kid's got a lot of range. I agree that, maybe the vulgar, crass humor gets a little repetitive after a bit, but also it didn't bother me so much. Not like what Justin was describing, like his fears with the trailer made it out to be. And some of those jokes actually landed for me more than I thought they would in the actual finished product of the movie. Mm-hmm. One thing you mentioned earlier, Justin, kind of struck me about this movie, which I think is why it works so well, which is that you said that in comedies, a lot of times people can be really mean-spirited. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the characters, like it's just like insult, insult, insult.
Yeah, I feel that way about
improv, insult.
Yeah, like I feel that way about some of the later like Will Ferrell movies, like Step Brothers. It's just, it's just so mean and like and hateful at times.
Right.
Like it's not fun to watch. I don't know.
Right, I agree with that. I think one thing that struck me when watching this movie is it's about 3. I don't even know how old they were. However old one is in 6th grade.
In 6th grade, which is, I think you're around 11 to 12.
So they're 11. Yeah, 11 to 12. These are just 3 boys who just want to be good, right? Like they're doing bad things and they're breaking the rules and they're, hanging out at parties and like getting into mischief and whatnot. They talk about not wanting to break rules. They talk about consent, with like, it's very much like 3 little boys who like don't want to do drugs. They don't want to get into trouble. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like the circumstances around them put them in trouble. I think that's fun. It's kind of like a change of pace, I guess. And the characters felt refreshing. The friendships felt refreshing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, overall, it worked. It worked for me, I think. It's not great, I don't think. I don't know if it's going to be like my best of the year list or anything like that. But yeah, I don't think I've laughed harder in a movie theater this year.
And I'm pretty much where you are. You said 3.5 stars out of 5. That's exactly what I gave it. And I contemplated giving it a 4, but I think ultimately I settled on 3.5. But like,
yeah, I think a rewatch could boost it up to 4, or it could keep it right at 3.5. I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know, but
I agree with Chris though. There were some things in there that did get on my nerves at the time, but now that it's over and I'm looking back on the movie, I'm not bothered by them.
Yeah, and I felt like most of those came early on when I was still unsure of where the movie was going to go. But I think I think looking back and knowing where it went, like I feel like those were I should give those more credit than I gave them like at the moment that they happened, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there are some good side characters as well in here that that make me laugh quite a bit. Chris mentioned the 2 teenage girls. I think there's some frat guys that are pretty funny, and I think Will Forte as Jacob Tremblay's dad.
I love Will Forte. I think he's always...
Yeah. The opening scene of the movie with him, like, I've seen that scene several times in, like, other films, right? And I think there are a few moments in this film that aren't totally original ideas that I've never seen before, but, like, I think the specific jokes within them, or like the actors performing these like scenes just kind of keep it from feeling like stale or like something I've seen before. And Will Forte in that opening scene, I think it really helps sell that for me. I thought it was good.
I agree. Well, because like the thing about it, I think what makes that land so well, and since it's the first scene, I don't feel bad talking about it in detail here, is like it's a scene where Jacob Tremblay he locks the door and like ties his computer cord around the door handle, and he's getting ready to like look at sexy images on his laptop. But it's not like porn like a teenager would look up. It's like a character customization on a video game that he's playing, and he just makes like the boobs bigger. And it's just like, it's so harmless, right? Like, yeah. It's just so like silly.
Yeah. And I don't want to spoil other jokes, but there's like a good little bit about like that computer cord being tied to the door to keep anyone from coming in. That's pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
What's really important that you said, Mike, that I don't think I could have phrased any better than you did, but like these characters, like everything they're doing in the film, it's there's a lot of raunchiness, there's a lot of vulgarity, and sure they swear, but like swearing doesn't make you a bad person, right? Like, but like
I hope not.
No, I'm
doesn't it?
Yeah, but everything that they're doing that's bad, like they're all doing. It's some sort of consequence of like them doing something for the right reasons, and I really like that. Like,
or it's like even if it's like they're doing something bad, they don't feel good about it.
Yeah, it's like reluctant.
Right? Like they're trying to be as good as possible while doing bad things.
Right, and also it's their like kind of naivety about, you know, like the drugs, for instance, you know, like just say no, you know, or like they're addicts and their misinterpretation of the rules and the way the real world works is what's cute and funny about them.
Oh man, like these girls basically, I think it's in the trailer, so I think it's not a big deal, but like these girls are basically after them because the boys unknowingly stole their ecstasy, which they call Molly in the movie.
Yeah.
And like a lot of it is like once they find out that they're carrying drugs, like one of their go-to strategies is like meet the girls to try to give it back, but instead of giving it back, try to have a heart-to-heart with them and tell them that they don't actually want to do drugs.
Yeah.
We got to convince them not to.
Yeah, and that makes me laugh.
Yeah, there's
just like
a lot of
the
that
innocence there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that type of innocent stuff that is really funny, I think. I don't want to get into too many jokes and like specific scenes until spoilers, but
agreed.
We'll get there. I think the one thing, just something that threw me off from time to time is like I do think that I felt like there were some improv moments, like some of the stuff that I don't like as much from like the later Will Ferrell films or some of like the Seth Rogen, James Franco type stuff later where like you cut away to like a single cam of somebody and they say something outlandish and like it doesn't quite feel like it flows within the scene. They just want to get that extra like outlandish random thing that's been said.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that in there that kept like it kind of threw off the timing and like my enjoyment of the movie a little bit because it felt a little forced, but like yeah, I think if they had like cut out those moments, the film would be even better.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I've never been a fan of like I don't think improv films well.
Unless you're Terrence Malick.
Well, it depends on how you're doing it. Yeah, Terrence Malick or
well, yeah, I mean that's not true. Not as a rule, I guess. I mean, I don't want to generalize too much, but like This Is the End, I did not think was a good movie due to that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Observe and Report, I did not think was a good movie for that reason.
It's
it's
a style where like, all right, this is what they just said to you. Now I want you to come up with 15 different answers.
Now riff on it.
Yeah. And so that sometimes it works for me. Like I think This Is was better than what you're saying, but like, so sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. Like 40-Year-Old Virgin, I like.
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's a bad movie.
I like 40-Year-Old Virgin, but I do not like This Is the End. I think it's a very bad movie.
I think they're equally good.
Oh.
So you're saying they're good?
Yeah.
Equally.
The other thing that I've seen said about the film, and this is my last thing before spoilers, but I've seen that people call it a bit of a ripoff of Superbad, but just with like sixth graders instead of seniors in high school.
Not as much as Booksmart was.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I don't understand. I don't really get it. Like, I felt the heck out of that during Booksmart of like, this feels like Superbad, but with girls. And I didn't think about it until later. Like I see where some of those comparisons come from. Like there's a lot of similar locations and a bit of a similar structure in a way.
Sure.
But like, I don't
adolescent friends having to learn about themselves, it's a pretty common staple, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's just about people growing older. I see it. I see it in Booksmart too. But I'm sure if we wanted to trace it back, it did not start with Superbad.
No. No, it's
a trope.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say that like I don't think I felt that until like while watching the movie, and it's later looking back on it after reading that I'm like, oh, I guess that was like pretty similar to Superbad. So I think the film does a good enough job of separating itself and setting itself apart that it's not like right there on the surface and super obvious, which I think good films do. There's not that many stories out there, and you've got to do it the same but different.
I'm kind of surprised. I think last week when we talked about doing this movie, I thought that I was going to like this movie the most and that I was going to be defending it. But it's turned. Like I don't like it as much as you guys. And I also think the other thing is, like we brought up Booksmart. I like Booksmart better. I'm going to guess that you guys like this better, right?
Yes. Immensely.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. I like Booksmart. I think I like this better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's interesting.
It's not necessarily like a straight comparison in a way, because I think that Booksmart aimed to do something a little different, and maybe like it aimed to like a higher accolade. Like I think it wanted to be something more than this movie wants to be, because this movie does want to be like a raunchy, vulgar comedy, and I think Booksmart aspired to more, but I just think it failed. And
Booksmart misses.
Yeah, it doesn't hit the heights that it was trying to reach. Whereas this one, The Good Boys, like it does meet its goal and ultimately ends up being higher, right? Like, so there's an admiration that I have for Booksmart.
So what you're saying is Booksmart aims higher and doesn't quite make it there. Good Boys aims lower but sticks the landing.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get it.
Well, cool. It sounds like we at least all recommend it somewhat, right?
Yeah, I would say go see it for sure. Go see it with a crowd. Go see it while it's new and it's popular, and you can go there with the biggest crowd possible, because I really do think that colored my enjoyment of the movie.
Yeah, take some friends with you.
Yeah.
Take your mom and dad.
Yeah.
And not your 6th grade kids or
I was about to say, take your sons and daughters.
All right. Well, are you guys ready to move into spoilers?
Let's do it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any orange cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
So I wanted to start out by asking what you guys' favorite character is in the movie, at least of like the main 3 characters. And I didn't want to talk about this before just because like some of their stories I didn't really want to spoil for anybody.
Yeah, I also want to add, like, and which one are you most like when you were in 6th grade? Like, which one were you the most?
Yeah.
Which one is you, essentially?
Okay.
I think I liked Keith L. Williams as Lucas the most. And you know what? They're all pretty funny in their own ways, but I think Lucas made me laugh the most, but Thor also made me laugh quite a bit, too. I like Lucas, and I'm just upset that he never got his grilled cheese.
Yeah, at the end.
Which was one of my favorite jokes in the movie, I think.
Yeah. Which one are you? Which one do you most like, Mike?
Most like?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Like in 6th grade, which one of those guys is you?
Probably... Goodness, not really any of them. I would say maybe Max, without the obsession with girls at that age.
Yeah, he's kind of the most regular guy.
Yeah, well, I'm not into like rules like Lucas is, and I'm certainly not into theater like Thor.
Sure.
So by process of elimination.
Yeah. Did you have an undeniable talent that you wanted to like pursue as your dream though?
Nope.
Okay. All right, Chris, who's your favorite and who are you most like?
I have to go with Lucas as well for me. I there's some really good moments in there, like and setups for jokes. Like my mom's my best friend. And then Thor says, something along the lines of like, well, what about me? I think that those moments are really great that he has. Yeah, just kind of the wacky stuff and the rules. Like, I really like the scab moment.
Yeah.
And how later on he becomes a scab, And I think if I was going to choose one of them, it would have to be Lucas, because I could never keep a secret. I mean, like, I would do something wrong and I'd get home and I would tell my parents immediately. Like,
sure.
Yeah.
So, like, the blurting out of the truth, that is what I was like.
I like how when they're talking about, like, what do you like? And he's like, rules. He lists rules as one of the things he likes.
Yeah.
What about you, Justin?
Oh, I mean, Lucas is the best character, I think. Like, he's just the most likable. I think that, honestly, I am probably most like Lucas, or at least I think I both am like Lucas now, in a sense, but also as a kid, I was most like Lucas because he just wants to go, like, play card games with his friends. And I played, like, Magic the Gathering as a kid, I think in 6th grade, and I just wanted to
play Ascension.
Yeah, he wants to play Ascension, but I love card games like that. I loved them as a kid. Like, I just wanted to play them. Like, I wasn't that concerned with girls, at least at that age. Yeah, and then now, like, I feel like honesty is the best policy, lots of times in lots of situations, and even when that, like, it doesn't work out favorably, I'm happy that I've been honest.
I mean, specifically with like Lucas, how it's not that he necessarily even thinks that honesty is the best policy. It's just like his consciousness gets to him, and he can't help but like blurt it out because he just feels so guilty about it. Like it's the only option for him. Or
you mean his conscience?
Hey, that's what I said.
Yeah. I love that. Like, he wants to handle the whole drone situation by like, we should just go tell them the truth. Like that'll handle it. And then I love the scene in the convenience store where
the cop.
He just keeps telling the cop like continue like escalating things that they've done, things that just get like worse and worse.
Yeah,
that was really funny.
The cop in that was really good too. He's just like, the setup is, he's like, I'm ready to go home. No more paperwork. And these kids are just confessing all these things. He's like, stop. I don't want to know any of this.
Right. Yeah. And I love the end of that where he gets on the phone and like, oh God, he's calling for backup. And he's just like, honey, I don't think I want kids anymore. Which I think is a really funny reaction, but it's one of those things where like they're imagining the world as so much like different than what's actually happening. Which I think is really like a true thing when you're a kid.
Oh yeah,
like
definitely.
It rings true, and that's one of the things that works in the film a lot.
Yeah, I agree with that, because like the innocence and like the just like you want to be good at that age, right? Like you don't want to be bad, you don't want to break rules, but you don't understand why adults do it either. You're like, like these kids can't for the life of them understand why these teenage girls want to do ecstasy.
I love it.
Like they just don't get it.
They think they're crackheads and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're addicted. Yeah. And that's actually the thing that works the best in this movie is just the misinterpretation of adult rules, Yeah. I think that's really, really works well.
Or like when they try to like look up porn and it's like porb and they like backspace and it's like porn, but like they just go to like the first website. And they're nervous about clicking whether or not they're 18 or not.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm just going to click yes.
Yeah.
It'll be on our permanent records.
Yeah, permanent record.
It's pretty good. I love the scene when they're going to sell the card and it ends up being Stephen Merchant.
Is like the pedophile conversation at the door.
Yeah. It's like, do I look like a pedophile? And they're like, yes, you look exactly. Like, I've never seen anybody in my life that looks more like a pedophile than you. So that's funny. And I love like the scene. Well, the scene beforehand where they pull out all the sex toys and he's like, I found all these weapons that we can like defend ourselves with. And it's all just like sex toys. Like that's kind of like, it was funny. And it's a bit of like one of those scenes where it's like, look, it's kids playing with sex toys and they don't know. It's like, Isn't that funny? But like, I love the payoffs that come from those. And it's one of those things that like, it's my argument against people who, like you, Chris, who say that it's vulgar for vulgar sake, because they milk more jokes out of them. Like, it's funny when they open the door and like that the situation, like in the context of like pedophilia, with like this guy showing up to kids, but they open the door with sex toys, just makes it like it's this next level of joke that I think is super funny. And then they bring the toys back throughout the movie too. Like when at the convenience store, when they leave, they like put like the big long dildo into the door handles to trap the cop in. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the movie, the anal bead comes back up as like the necklace that Max gives the girl.
Yeah. They actually did milk them quite a bit. Like, and I wasn't sure initially when they brought them out. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I thought I was going to get based on the trailer. You know, like kids in vulgar situations. But I agree with you. They handled it with a little bit more. I don't want to call it class, but they handled it better by not using it as like a throwaway gag.
Yeah. And even like the sex doll thing has that big payoff in that scene where they're running across like traffic and they cause the wreck.
Which I really love that scene, the highway scene where they're crossing it. I thought that was
I could
really
not think
well
of
done.
Bowfinger.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
Yeah.
Which is maybe the funnier scene ultimately in Bowfinger's. Bowfinger's a better comedy, but that scene in Bowfinger is so funny. And this one, the times where like I can't help but compare it to it, and it doesn't live up. But like that crash and like the whole payoff is like that. You just think it's like a person for a second flying out, and you're like, oh my god. And then you kind of like there's that moment where you recognize the dress pattern, right? And you're like, oh, it's all coming back like full circle. And then it's super funny. I love payoffs. Like I love comedy like that, where you're like these things that happened earlier in the film come back and pay off.
My favorite Thor moment was whenever they're getting ready to go into the party and he takes off his like shirt and ties it around his waist. It made me laugh. I don't know why. It's just a very simple moment, but for some reason it was hilarious.
Yeah.
One of the jokes that I really enjoyed that kept coming back was the child-proof gummies. And it actually kind of had a big payoff at the end because he's no longer a child. He can open the child-proof gummies, right? But like, I like how that kept coming back, and they're like, here, they couldn't ever open it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the scene at the frat house too.
I love that scene. I don't know if you guys thought about this, but I couldn't help but think of Boogie Nights during it, because I thought they were kind of paying homage to the whole Boogie Nights scene, the scene where they all go to Alfred Molina's house and there's the guy throwing firecrackers popping and like keeping them on edge. Like you had the air horn in the frat house, like kept going off and like making them all jump.
And Lucas kept screaming.
Yeah. his scream was good. But I assumed that they were pulling from Boogie Nights on that just because it's such a, like, it's also a drug deal.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That makes sense.
I found that fun. I also like the opening song that's like opening the movie whenever he's looking at like the character in the game and making her boobs bigger is a song that's like I only know from the Boogie Nights soundtrack. Double Boogie Nights reference if you want to look at it that way.
I'm not opposed to being reminded of Boogie Nights. No.
And I thought it did it in a subtle way where I wasn't just like exactly thinking of Boogie Nights, you know?
Yeah, like that one scene in that John Travolta movie where he
From Paris
he orders
with Love?
From Paris with Love, where he orders a Royale with cheese.
Yeah, it's not like that kind of nod to another film, which is not a good nod.
No, it isn't.
But yeah, the scene was funny. I completely forgot about the paintball gun in the backpack up to that point. I don't know about you guys.
No, yeah, totally. I didn't see it coming, but I wasn't thinking too hard either. I enjoyed the scene where the girl's chasing them. As soon as she catches up with them, they're like, she's trying to touch our penises. So she has to like dive into her friend's front seat and it's like, drive.
You know, I always thought that there'd be like a moment at the end of the film where one of those kids ends up with one of the girls, you know, 10 years later, and, you know, like they end up together.
Yeah.
10 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little worried about that, if I'm honest, like in the scene at the end of the party where it's Thor and Lucas sitting on the couch and they come in and they're like on the Molly and stuff because they were like overly friendly, but then it just ended up being a pretty sweet scene. So I'm happy.
Yeah. Except Lucas never got his grilled cheese.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So we're just gonna give up on the grilled cheese?
Yeah, like, so no grilled cheese then?
It's groceries.
But they're just high, so they just moved on and forgot real quick. but he just like doesn't comprehend it. That's good. That's a good joke.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, we get some like groceries, and he's like, oh, I love groceries. So funny.
Yeah. I also enjoyed the end with Thor's performance.
Yeah, the Rock of Ages.
Like, yeah, the musical, and it's like all the cocaine, like in the musical.
Yeah, I love all the reaction, like the crowd reaction shots where everyone's like, "What?"
Yeah.
One thing that I did really like a moment that was really endearing, and I think that it's one of the times where like the film started to really like turn me and get me on its side, was when they call Jacob Tremblay's character Max over to like the lunch table to the one kid who like is hosting the party. And he invites him to the party, and they're like, no, we just want you to go. And he's like, no, but like, you know, my friends, they're cool. Trust me. Like, they can come. Like, I feel like in other films, like TV show, like the route that I've seen 100 times is like, they kind of abandon their friends to be cool. But like, it's so likable that he's like, insists like, and kind of sticks up for him and like, makes sure that they get to be invited. Right.
Yeah, he's almost on the cusp of not knowing what cool is. He's just about to discover what cool is, but still, you know, like in his head, his friends are still cool, you know, like a type of thing. Like they could sit at the cool table.
Yeah.
Well, they're the Beanbag Boys.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
the Beanbag Boys are cool.
Yeah, and it leads to this line because the kid calls. He's like, "Are you sure about them? They seem kind of random." I love the line later in the film. It's a couple scenes later, but Max says to Thor, he's like, you know, they said you were random, and I want them to know that you're specific.
Yeah.
Which is funny, but it's so sweet. Like, I was just like, oh, that's so nice. And like, it just made me smile.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, the whole movie, the characters are likable even when they're doing bad things because like they just want to be good kids, you know? They want to be loyal kids to each other. They just want to figure stuff out. So you don't have like the usual tropes of like, I need to betray my friends, or I need to figure out what true friends really are, or, you know, or something like that. Like, it's very much just like, as you get older, you will grow apart because your interests are profoundly different as you get older and become the person you're going to be versus when you're like in 5th grade. And that's okay, you know, and you can still be friends somewhat, but you don't have to hang out with each other all the time. Like, you can have other friends and other cliques and other hobbies, you know, and other interests.
Yeah. It makes that whole idea of Beanbag Boys for life, we do everything together, like really pay off towards the end, is when they have to, like, that realization where they have to like grow apart. It's like, we can't literally do everything together because like I don't want to always play Ascension, or I don't want to sing in musicals. It's
or I don't want to like go to kissing parties where you like play spin the bottle.
Yeah, it's just like, I love that ending of like, yeah, we can't spend all of our time together because we each want to do different things, and to like, in order to like achieve our goals, we're gonna have to like grow apart some. And like, that is like the moment of the movie that I actually got really emotional during, is like that party, that last party, sort of like get together scene to celebrate Thor's musical performance, where they all see each other and they have that last hug. They have that hug, and it's almost a quick hug, but then they like pull in really tight. I that worked for me. I got a little teary eyed.
Yeah, I think it worked too. And I also, like, they're like, what did they say? Like, we'll be there for the big stuff.
Yeah. We'll never miss the big stuff.
Yeah, which is kind of how friends as you get older are, right? Like, you don't see each other every single day or even every week. Someone gets married, you know, friends will be there.
Mm-hmm.
Casual Cinecast Boys for life. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it even more now. Like, I will say, even like, I really like Superbad a lot, and I think it's a really great comedy film. But like, one thing I do think this has over it is that in that movie, both guys just wanted to go to like a party and have sex, right? And that's kind of another thing if you look like American Pie. Like, the main characters all just want to have sex. And I like that these kids in this, like, they each have their own thing that they want to do and that they're interested in. And it's not just like a group of people or a pair of friends after like the same goal, in a sense. I like that. I think that's one thing that like actually makes this movie kind of stand out, at least in that way, like above something like Superbad for me.
They both have a lot of heart, just like Booksmart had a lot of heart as well. I just think, I think you put it well earlier, which is say that like, this movie doesn't quite aim as high. Like, it doesn't want to make you emotional. It just wants to be a straight up comedy, but does it really succinctly and really well. It does what it tries to do very well and doesn't, like, its reach does not exceed its grasp.
Yeah. And it understands that you should like your characters or understand your characters, I guess, and like the value of having a character we can get behind in a comedy anyways. Yeah, and I'm not saying I like this movie better than Superbad. Ultimately, I just think that's an aspect of this film that, I like better than that aspect of Superbad. But I am higher on the film than when I started this conversation, too. Like, just looking back, like, I'm remembering so much so fondly. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for me, for Good Boys.
Yeah. Any conversation from here on out would just be me remembering funny parts.
That only has value for so long, so we should end it.
I agree. Quit while we're ahead.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. And then, of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right. Stay tuned to this feed. Our next episode will be over Ready or Not, unless something else opens up nearby that's better looking than that, but probably that.
Yeah, it looks good. A24 is on a roll this year, I think.
Oh, is it A24?
Oh, they were on a roll last year, too.
Yeah,
imagine that.
I've liked A24 for quite some time. But, yeah, I didn't know it was A24.
Oh, wait, I could
that
be
makes
wrong.
me more excited for it.
Oh, no.
We're going to look like fools if not. But oh well.
Oh, no, it's not A24. I was wrong.
Uh-oh. I hope you keep this in and don't edit this out.
Yeah, is it A22?
Yep, that was it. A22. Okay. You can see how I would obviously make that mistake.
Yeah, very easy mistake to make.
Classic Justin.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Goodbye.